Hi, this is Eric Martin with Board Game Geek. I'm here with Sebastian Faller from the Nürnberg Spielearchiv.
Yeah,
Lincoln and I took a tour of the archive, a German tour, mind you. In 2019, we did not understand a lot of what we heard, but we were fascinated by what we saw. So I contacted them and asked whether it would be possible to talk about the archive, show off some of its holdings, just get a sense of what the purpose of it is.
So yeah, I actually joined more or less 1 year ago, and my first bigger project was the Spears Games archive, which is where we are right now.
Okay.
The whole archive started as more or less an official archive for Spiel des Jahres. In the beginning, it was just a media scholar or a professor at the university in Marburg who decided to archive what Spiel des Jahres got and tested.
That's right. So not just the winners, not just the recommended, but everything they tried out. Okay.
Exactly, because the games were already there, and then he thought it would probably be a good idea to just keep them and organize them, archive them in a way. Okay, so he started collecting everything published after 45 in German or in German language, more or less. Not just in Germany, but there's also Austrian, Swiss games.
Yes.
And but that's the focus of the collection, to document the post-war board game production in Germany, more or less.
Okay. How soon did it outgrow whatever space this professor had? I mean, how many games are in the collection now?
So it's around 30,000 documented, and there's plenty more because there's lots of card games which are not cataloged yet,
right?
Because there's just so many, and it takes forever. And there's also, I think, it might be 2,000-3,000 more board games not cataloged, but maybe duplicates, maybe not sure yet, and 2,000-3,000 more which are definitely duplicates, and which are also here because they were meant to be played, or for scholarly purposes they had to collect duplicates, and that's where we have them.
So how did the archive take its current form?
So actually it traveled from Marburg to Nürnberg.
I know Spears was a company that lasted for decades. I know eventually they were bought by Mattel.
Yeah.
But they had a long history before that.
Yes.
Yes, which is exhibited on the shelves.
So it was founded in the neighbor city Fürth, which is just outside the limits of Nürnberg, but then pretty quickly moved to Nürnberg, to a new building right next to the new railway, which was it was more or less a meadow back then, and they built the first factory. Right now it's an industrial district. In the beginning it was more or less toys, wooden articles, like maybe some chess or simpler games, but stationary equipment, boxes, paper boxes, things like that.
Right.
And then pretty quickly it evolved into developing their own games, board games.
Okay. And what year was that it started?
So the first catalog we have is from 1904.
Okay.
So we have a ledger, this big book over there, and it documents that games were published before that, but we don't know exactly how they looked or which ones they were. We have some older games, but we can't really date them because we don't have a catalog for that. But they turned into a more or less full-fledged board game company around, I think, 1910. They had lots of other articles, but mostly board games.
Okay.
So the Spielearchiv actually belongs to the Toy Museum, to the Nürnberg Toy Museum, and there was a donation of a part of the collection of the former Spears Games archive in Enfield, next to London, in 1996. So there was already, part of the archive was already here in the Toy Museum. The rest of it got donated in 2017 and then just got joined here. So part of it is still over there, but it's in the same database, and we're cataloging it in the same way. Yeah, it was the last company owner, Francis Spear. He started the archive, and he also saved a big part, or all of it. Well, because when Mattel bought it, they didn't really care for all these old games. They bought it for Scrabble and for nothing else. So, it's basically what they did. Some games, they also had the Mattel logo on them, or Mattel tried, for example, or Othello, some other games that were part of the Mattel board game spectrum, to sell them under Spears Games, but it was a really brief period of time, maybe 1 year, and then they dropped it, and it dropped the name and continued doing Scrabble. Something about the history of the company would also be interesting, because it was a Jewish company, Jewish family company, and obviously it was founded in Nuremberg, and it didn't stay in Nuremberg all through the Second World War, because lots of some members of the family were killed by the Nazis, and the others managed to flee to Great Britain, where they founded a new part of the company. So Spears Games in England was founded in 1932, which was shortly before Hitler came to power. But I think they already thought that it might happen, and they managed to save a big part of the company, but not all of the members of the family in that way. So a bit of a tragic history, but they rebuilt the factory after the Second World War, even though it got
Demolished?
Depossessed? Is it the
repossessed?
The right word? So the Nazis took it, and it was taken over, it was taken away from them, and they required it and rebuilt it, even though it was demolished, with their own company money, and then kept or started manufacturing games again, which wasn't very common, because most people would just say, okay, I'm not coming back to that country.
Right.
An interesting thing is also that there were some really long-running games like this, the magnetic fish pond game. Lots of other companies also had that. Yeah, which is still on the market. But once it clicked with people, with kids in the 1890s or something. I think that's the first appearance of that game, and nothing has been changed, and it still works. It's just a magnet and some fish, and
that's all you need.
And the same goes for the flying hats, if you know that.
Do not know that.
You have these huge paper hands, you hit them, and then you try to drop your cone. So they took the simple mechanic of tiddledy-wings, is it called? And just drew a map of England with all the largest cities and called it Bombs on England, and then you would, by flipping the chip onto that map, you were trying to hit the major British cities. So that's kind of a good example to see how you can use a simple mechanic and propaganda and mix them, and without any effort. So you can just you can put any topic on a game, on a simple game mechanic, and
So this was a Spears game as well.
Yeah.
Because part of the family had gone to England, but then
exactly, and then the Nazis got control of the publisher, and they manufactured their own games. So they just took existing Spears games, like Flying Through Germany, and they called it Flying Through Großdeutschland, which is Greater Germany, and they changed the borders, and they should put a swastika on the plane, and that's that. So
otherwise, same thing.
Otherwise, same thing. So
okay,
it's like, I don't know, repainting the public signs with a new political party logo, and just repainting the games, redressing them, and putting propaganda into them.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing the hats. It's like old hats or custom made. Someone do? Well, no, just with the hat on the hand there. A very simple mechanism.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
But it works. It's pretty effective. So it has some. I think it's in the oldest ones. It's lead in there.
Okay.
In the tip. And then it's something else, I don't know, something not poisonous. But some of those cones are also made from celluloid, I saw in the manual, which is, I think, pretty flammable. So
that's right. There's the asbestos years. You have all sorts of things in there. Yes.
That's Tell Me, a jolly party game for young and old alike. Also, one notable thing is that they started doing international versions of their games really quickly. So even before the turn of the last century, so in the 1890s or something,
right,
they put their games on the European market. and had them translated and adapted. And I don't know if other companies did that to that extent.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating to see too. Just you're calling on this nostalgia element. Like this game came out. What?
This one's from '89, and this one might be from the '50s, I think.
Right. So 30 years later, you're calling to Oma and be like, "Oh, I remember.
Yeah,
I have to buy this again for."
Yeah, and then also the '90s where they they made everything flashy and I don't know, with happy families on the covers.
That's right.
That's also multiple editions of one game. That one, I like that one a lot because it was such a big deal to just drive with a car in the 1910s that you made a whole board game which is just called the car drive, so the Autofahrt. It's just the drive with your car. And the last one, we found it interesting that they even manufactured their own printing plates for the manuals. So the game, The Climbing Monkeys, they printed in-house. So they actually made this is the rule for the game, and they printed inside the box. And this was in the 70s and 80s, and they still did like all steps of the production in-house, which to me was pretty surprising because I thought by the 80s it would have been outsourced long ago, but wasn't. So.
These are all the themed games, right? So, money,
This is
ecology.
One of my favorite shelves, which is called Gesellschaftsspiele. Gesellschaftsspiele is what many people call board games. In Germany, it's just games for having company play.
Right.
But these are all games that deal with society in a way, or societal issues. So some of them are political games, some are in a way historical settings, and some are, I don't even know how to call them in English. They're called Planspiele in German. So games, simulation games more or less. So simulations of, I don't know, you are the mayor of the village, and then you are the guy who wants to build an oil pipeline through the village, and you are the other one.
Right.
And yeah, to me they are really fascinating because they use the medium in a different way.
We are in part of the archives, in the Spiel archives. So first, is any of this open to the public, or you only do it for special occasions, having tours and things like that?
We're having tours here. It's not for the broad display.
Okay.
just tours and interested journalists, scientists, and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in part of the archive here, and then you were talking about the Mancala games on the side? I don't know.
Yeah, here we rebuilt the old order from Marburg, from the Marburg archive, and this whole was looking good, a good looking wall because of the bookshelf games there, and this was a special collection of Mancala games, yes, from Bern Bartholde.
Okay. I mean, I can definitely see how for research purposes, someone could definitely be interested. Yes. Well, just trying to explore the history or certain game lines, or it was kind of phenomenal walking through during the tour that you had and seeing particular game lines that I might have one or two, and it turns out there's 12. And
Yes.
Yes, and you wouldn't even know that they exist.
Every
Possibly.
time I go up, it's quite. I have surprises. It's we have a few floors here, right? So a lot of games to explore.
The organizing principle in here, you mentioned this as being the original one? Or?
Yeah, I mentioned we had to do, when you set it up, we had to put up the old order Bern Bartholde invented, so it's the main game goal. So you have just simple dice games here, and you have themed games, games with a topic over here. So, and we rebuild it, get it up with our database.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That we know, okay, this is really standing in shelf B26.
Okay, with enough room to add more.
Yes. We have to reorganize it. We're now, since 1 or 2 years, we have a chaotic order because this takes too much space, obviously.
I think that's every gamer's dilemma, though. I mean, it's far easier to acquire games than to organize them, catalog them, keep track of what you have.
This is true.
Yes, or get rid of them, if that is the case may be. Yes.
Yeah, here are the actually the old ones, because it is the easier ones, the really simple dice games. So here you found the Mensch ärgere dich nicht, Ludo, and all kinds of stuff.
Although Tikal.
Yeah. Don't touch the game by its cover. Yeah, that was it, because sometimes there's a box but a whole other game in it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. We are here in the Alex Randolph room, which is a very specialized room. It has lots of prototypes, which is phenomenal to see. I've seen pictures before of Alex Randolph with all the shelves behind him and things on the table. How did the Spielearchiv acquire this?
Actually, before it was in Nürnberg, he donated it to the Game Archive in Marburg, as he was still living, because he knew he couldn't keep it all together, and he was also afraid that it was tore apart.
Right.
And he wanted it to go completely into one place. And so he decided to donate it to the Games Archive in Marburg. And he and Ben Bartole and Johann Rüttinger transported the whole archive through Venice on the ships in boxes to Marburg somehow. And so when we moved the whole archive from Marburg to Nürnberg, this was always a special collection and treated specially because, of course, it's all prototypes.
It's fascinating to see, mostly because of his artisanship.
Yes.
How I guess he would make all these pieces, just carve everything himself. I mean, it's really the art,
Yes, he did.
art in the art of game design here.
In Venice, he had a wood turner who made all the figures.
Okay.
He drew them, and the wood turner made them.
Right.
Yes. And yeah, of course, there were no computer programs. It's all hand drawn.
Many thanks to Steffi and Sebastian for allowing Board Game Geek to tour the Deutsches Spielearchiv. We spent more than 2 hours walking the many floors, surveying the aisles, and barely getting a taste of what is available in its collection of more than 30,000 games. I can't wait to go back in the future. They've invited us back. I don't know what they have in mind. Probably not me camping out in the aisles. Just pawing through as many games as I can. It's a fascinating collection. I look forward to seeing their integration efforts to consolidate many different collections under one overarching system. I can appreciate the difficulty of doing that, having worked for Board Game Geek for many years, as it's a tough task to try to wrap your arms around the entirety of what games can be. If you get a chance, maybe you should investigate and see whether you can visit the Deutsches Spielearchiv yourself.